Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Show podcast. We're thrilled to introduce our guest today. He's a celebrated keynote speaker, coach, and author. He's transformed the leadership landscape for restaurant executives across more than 20 brands. You know him, you love him, Mr. Jason Ebrooks. Jason, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing absolutely fantastic. Weather is going great. It is warm outside. It's consistent, man. And it's good to be here on the Restaurant Growth Show, having listeners learn about profitability.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, a little bird tells me that things are real busy on your end. It's going crazy for you.
Bananas, almost as crazy as Jose's favorite hot sauce. Not that crazy, but yes, it seems like word is spreading out that Jason E. Brooks leaves it all on the table. No secrets here. You want to find out about how to make your team better or business better. I am not going to just leave it and give you 15% and save the other 85% for down the street. No. And that's why things are busy. But I love that part, though. I love that part.
Pun intended. Jason Brooks is leaving it on the table. That's fantastic. Jason, before we jump into the interview, I got to say, I love memes. I love quotes and all those short forms of media. It's what makes the internet great. So I was reading your newsletter today, Manage, Lead, Coach, Succeed. I was reading that earlier today, and there is this social media quote of the day in there that I really quite enjoyed. I got a kick out of it. It's a chef's PSA or a chef's public service announcement, and it says, if you ever get caught crying in the walk-in cooler, just say you were cutting onions. Works every time. And that really spoke to me. And I think a lot of our listeners will probably identify well with that.
I mean, you know who you are. You've had that walk-in cooler moment to where you just had to go in, close the door, and just let it all out verbally, drop a tear or two, and then quickly grab some shallots to make sure that people think you were chopping onions. So yes, now, Jose, have you ever had a walk-in cooler moment in your life?
I call them cooler cries. I call them cooler cries.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was not in a kitchen. There was no kitchen around, but there, I could have said, and I did probably, that there was dust coming out of the air conditioner.
You got a little dust in your eye. That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
I love it when that happens.
We've all had a cooler cry in some way, shape, or form. Listen, Jason, you mentioned the challenge of balancing training budgets with profitability. Can you share some strategies on how restaurants can invest in training without harming their bottom line?
Wow, that's a tricky one. And I say that that's a tricky one because we as restaurant owners, restaurant managers that are in charge of a business, we tend to look at the percentage first. We want that return first. We want to make sure that by the hour, by the day, when we're looking at food cost variance or labor for the day, that we want to make sure that we're hitting a certain number. That's why I say that I think that question is a bit tricky, because when it comes down to training, you have to really look at the results on the back end, because that shows the actual cost. You know, when it comes down to how well you train your people, those results show after they are acquainted to what they do, not on the week-to-week number. There was a study done by IBM, and it showed that companies that invest in development and learning actually do better on their labor and generate more revenue than their competitors do. But that's in the long term. And that's where I think that sometimes that we get challenged, is that we think short term automatically because of how fast our heart pumps blood when we are on the line, whenever it's busy, when the orders are coming through, and that immediate effect of I handled it right then, that's what we generate to. But there are, even as mom and pop restaurants, single unit operators, we have to think about how can we involve technology into our training. Think about Chick-fil-A, okay? Chick-fil-A. Most people know Chick-fil-A. Have you heard of Chick-fil-A? Yes,
course.
of
All the
course.
way up here in
Most people
Canada.
all the way up in the north. But one of the things that whenever someone says, what is a business that does training well? Give me a restaurant that does training well. Most people, brands that come to mind is Chick-fil-A. And then the question is why? Why is it that Chick-fil-A does training well? If you think about it, if you get hired at a Chick-fil-A, whether you're hired in Miami, in Denver, in Los Angeles, in Atlanta, or in Charlotte, North Carolina, there's a high percentage chance the things you learn from day 1 to day 30 of your first 30 days are going to probably be the same. Now, you can go to any other brand. And if you get hired again in Denver, in Miami, in Los Angeles, in Charlotte, North Carolina, what's the possibility that the exact same terms, phrases, and training that you get is the exact same? Probably none. Now, even getting down to the single store operator, if Billy trains you or if Susie trains you, what's the chance that you're going to hear the exact same words depending on what position that you're being trained? That's where we have to get into using that digital side of development and learning in order for us to really see to strengthen sales without it affecting our bottom lines. There are great softwares out there, from Opus Training to Perfect Venue to even 7 Shifts, that owners of single store units can pay a low monthly fee. And it helps to cover basics of food safety, guest interaction, certain basics, but you have to have the constant basics being said to everyone. And that doesn't mean that our trainers aren't good. We still want them to add on their whipped cream, their cherry on top, their sprinkles, their chocolate sauce, of all the things that they've learned of how they do what they do. But the training aspect has to be consistent. That's where we have to take that, well, how's it affecting my labor for today? I hear you about today, but do you know how much we lose when it comes down to a bad hire? That's the real number that we should be looking at.
Interesting. So there's software that can help, right? Build or support a culture that's already in motion, so to speak. But that human element of the being scared and the amygdala makes you think and be concerned more about the immediacy than a longer, better horizon thinking those terms. Sounds really challenging. So how can restaurant owners actually shift that mindset to see training as an ongoing system rather than a 2-week program?
Well, it's a great question. And I think the very first step is making sure that the training that you start on day 1, that it encompasses the whole building. I think you may have heard me say this before, but we do orientation wrong. We tend to only have them focus on a few things whenever they come in, and they're only focused on when they walk in, when their next break is going to be, where the laptop or the iPad is to get in their learning, and then that one position. I always say that on day 1, you open up their eyes to see the big picture. How you change their mindset is that you make them understand the whole business on day 1, not just bussing tables, not just cooking French fries, not just making salads. You're taking them out all the way to the front curb and make them view the building from the customer's eyes and from an owner's eyes. Have them understand what all of the processes are. They don't need to capture all the processes as you're walking them through on the first day. But when they walk through and they can understand what's going on with the outside of the building to the inside as you walk in, to what those interactions should be, to what the guest feels like when they're sitting down in your dining room, to when they walk inside the restroom, then to when they walk towards the back and they walk in the kitchen and they wash their hands first to make sure there's nothing from the outside that they're bringing inside, and then what the different areas are, and then the walk-in cooler where you cry with the onions. All of that stuff, when they see that on day 1, they're like, okay, I can be more effective than just, when is my break? When can I get on my laptop to do some training? And what's my one position for the day? They are truly seeing it, and that mindset shifts. Last piece. And to be honest, whenever we think about our colleagues that work outside of the restaurant business, they talk about all these training sessions, seminars, and trust falls and camps that they do, all from Wall Street to all of these other places. But is it that we in the restaurant business, we don't really cherish training? Is it that we don't think that it's important? That's not true. We just don't make the effort or make the schedule to be like, once per year, I want to invest in my team, whether it's a core set, core 5, core 10, however large your business is, to get in additional training for the team. And you have to plan that. But that also helps to change that mindset.
I like it. Sounds
I
like in orientation should start with as a ghost shopper, as a customer.
almost, yeah.
True.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's really important to have that balcony view of the complete operations, a complete 360-degree idea of front of house, back of house, what's happening in the parking lot. You know, what are the high level aspects of the business, and then we can dive into specificity and what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that's a fantastic approach. Jason, when it comes to resource allocation, what sometimes restaurants, they have to get creative, right? So what are some creative ways restaurants can extend their training resources to get the most value out of every dollar spent?
Well, I think one of those ways is being very specific about the onboarding experience and how your training program aligns with your business goals. Every year, we make goals for our business. It doesn't matter what the business is, whether it is landscaping or it's building rockets. We say for 2024, these are our goals. But the question is, how many times do we look at our training annually and say, does our training match that goal? If we're saying that we're going to build sales to X, build customers to X, build this many rockets to implement this kind of technology, how much does our training of a new hire walking in help match those 3 to 5 goals every single time? I bet there's lots of times that we create a training program in 2020, and in 2024, we then say 4 years later, 4 business plans later, now let's take a look at our training. Maybe we should rethink it. No, we have changed goals and the focus. And yes, at times that for the year, it's just a tweak. You really have to say, if this is the business goal, what are we allocating to hit that business goal? And hitting that business goal in the hospitality industry is people knowing what the target is and then acting towards with intention of what that goal is. So when it comes down to how do we allocate resources to make sure training is spent well, the very first thing we have to do is, when we look at our business goal annually, look at the training as well. Does it match what the business goal is? If it doesn't, and it probably won't, how do we tweak our training on every position to help meet that goal?
That sounds like a lot of training. I mean, if I put my hat on, my restaurateur hat on, which it's just imaginary.
What?
And
Wait. There's no actual physical restaurant hat?
No. But I have not owned a restaurant. I just have a lot of experience with the owners. How does like a continuous training program impact the performance and morale of restaurant teams?
Man, I think that that's shown every day. You know, when you think about the morale and how that is affected, your teams perform better whenever they are consciously positive that they're making the right decision. Look at a server that's on the floor and they don't know how to answer a question from a customer, and they're like, hey, can I fix this or can I not? And they're walking back and forth. The customer's getting pissed off. And it's like, well, did we actually train them that whenever it comes down to taking care of something less than $10, less than $20, you have the ability to make that choice yourself? Your servers walk around with more pride, walk around with more stature whenever they know they can fix things on the spot to make sure things are going good. And then when it comes down to the impact of their performance, a lot of their performance of our team is usually measured with guest surveys. Just like you said, secret shoppers. Most secret shoppers, they come in, they score a 1 to 5, 5 being great, 1 being not so great. And then we say, well, how is our team doing? How is the training going? How many of the people in your restaurant knows the questions that are on that survey? If you really think about it, how many people within your business know what the actual questions are in the secret shopper or in the guest survey. I would bet you 90% of the listeners that 90% of their employees do not know. Yet still we say, yes, we want fives, make sure they fill out a survey, make sure that they do this. But how do they even know how they're doing well, except for I didn't get a 5 on my shift last week? So making sure that we train them to know what's in those surveys, what's on those secret shops. That's one of the ways for them to actually have higher morale and higher performance, because that performance is the results. They cannot get the results if they don't know what the question is. So make sure that we take everyone, whenever in training, through the actual secret shopper questions, through the guest survey questions, because they may think that they're asking what is the server's first name, last name, their date of birth, and their social. No, that's not what they're asking. They are asking very simple questions in order to make sure that the actual interaction is good. But if we don't train them on that interaction, what those questions are, we can't see those results.
It's honestly, you cannot score well on a test, any test, if you don't know the questions. That is so profound, right? Why are we not doing that with our staff in all industries, right? Secret shopper or not. How do we score high on these surveys, right?
And the thing is that whenever it's first rolled out within our restaurants, I guarantee, yes, everyone there gets to understand what's on it. And then the 150% turnover kicks in. And by the third quarter, you have your second set of new staff. How many times did you go back and show these new hires what those questions are, to make sure that they understand what that is, what a subpar 1, a par 3, and a 5 above par interaction is for that question? And then we say, how can we get better, and why do we get bad scores? Because we don't know the questions that are on the test.
Jason, things are changing really quickly, not just the restaurant industry, but how can training programs be designed to be flexible and adaptable?
It still goes back to the annual view. And that's where the flexibility piece comes in. The flexibility piece is planning your training to be updated every single year. And then adaptable is just the focus on breaking your business up into many businesses. To be quite honest, we have catering, we have takeout, we have dine-in, we have different aspects of our business. We have online ordering. And then how do we now say, what should that training program be for those businesses? We tend to look at those businesses even as separate P&Ls, the catering P&L, all of those different P&Ls on what am I bringing in weekly, monthly, and then what am I spending when it comes down to those same areas too. Training within that, the bodies that are used within that is the exact same thing.
So something that you mentioned earlier comes to mind, where the scoring. I can see that by providing the questions, and the questions having them aligned to for the secret shoppers, having it aligned with the values of the culture, that support the culture, all that stuff. But the thing that comes to mind, and I say because I got the book, it's the never stop training culture. Can you elaborate on that?
Never stop training. We can go back to one of the earlier questions of how to change the mindset. And the mindset starts on day one, whenever they are coming in, and then we're giving them that real big picture view, the ownership view of our business. And it's just the taste. It's just the taste to understand what goes into this business, because it is a business first, and then we serve food as people second. And then as we delegate, as we begin to look at how do I do the correct way of training someone into stepping into different roles. What I like to do, which is also in key number 3, delegate by creating mini GMs, is to take 4 or 5 core people, take all of your tasks as the owner or as the general manager, and finding out what are the most important things that only you can do, things that a assistant can do, and things that a key team member can do. And then next, what has to be done above everything, or else it's going to hurt the guest experience. what has to be done, but can be done later on in the day. But if you don't do it, it could still hurt the guest experience. And then what has to be done, it does not affect the guest experience, but it does affect the business in general. If you notice, all three of those things has to be done. But you're then saying on the scale, what is the highest, what's the middle, and then what's the third? And then taking those items and then saying, now, out of these three things that either I can do or my assistant or a key, and then the most priority, second, and then third, how can I find 3 or 4 items that I actually want to delegate? And then when I delegate those things, those people are now the kings and queens of that item for the next 3 or 6 months. And now whenever they're ready to develop even more, use the person that you trained to do that item to then train the next person. It's just like we always say, you can learn pretty good when someone tells you something, but when you have to say it, something clicks in your mind. It tends to resonate even more when you have to say that thing back. So as you use your team to then teach someone else, yes, you still follow up because it's still your business. You still have to follow up. But as they teach that, they now have a heightened sense of what that task is. And then you're changing task every 3 months, once per quarter, maybe twice per year. That keeps the training going. Last piece. Everyone has been here. Everyone that's listening has been in that situation where you put in your 2-week notice and it seems like you've fallen off the planet, especially from your boss. You get no more development, no more anything. It's like you are the black pariah. They don't want to touch you. How come whenever someone puts in their notice, we don't shift their training into something else? How come we don't shift their training into versus training you how to work in my business? I'm going to train you how to onboard into another business, how to assimilate going into another brand, how to get to know who has the influence in that next business, even if the next business is your competitor. Because what you're doing and what you don't realize when you then change the training to how to offboard them, not just with questions of how'd you like it here and how was your boss, but giving them the tools to start their next job successfully. Whenever you do that, the rest of your team watching you, they're like, that is someone I want to work for the rest of my life. That's a true coach. The second thing is, although we think the grass is greener on the other side, there's a lot of times when that person leaves and they get there, it's not what they promised. And how you treated them during that 2 weeks that you shifted into, I'm going to teach you how to be better at coming on board a team. Eventually, they're going to say, I'm coming back to work for Jose. Because he treated me right all the way till the very last day. And now you're just building your team even stronger when and if they come back.
Love it. Brilliant. That is totally outside of the box.
Never stop training. We started off this episode with a public service announcement. We're going to end this episode with a public service announcement by Andy Samberg. Never stop, never stopping, from the movie Pop Star. Very funny.
I have another one.
Love it.
And that is, when you really want to learn something, teach it.
Well, that's much more serious than mine, but yeah.
Man, that's good. That's good.
That's very good. Thank you, Jose. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode today. Jason, now's your time to plug away. Where can people connect with you? What's your platform of choice?
Let's keep it simple. JasonEbrooks.com. JasonEbrooks.com. You can find me on there. You can find out more about the book, more about coaching, more about seminars, being on stage. It's a great read. It's built just for you. You have less time on your hands to read someone's memoir. You want to get into the content, get out, and get back into your business where you're needed. I'll see you at JasonEbrooks.com.
Speaking of plugs, this podcast is sponsored by Dine Pricing, real-time restaurant profitability. Dine Pricing uses artificial intelligence to improve restaurant profitability by dynamically updating menus across digital channels like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks again to Jason for joining us. Until next week, say goodbye, Jose.
Jose.
Also, I want to mention your next appearance you will enter the 5 Timers Club. So that'll be 5 times on the Restaurant Growth Show. So we got to get you a 5-timer jacket,
A 5-timer dine pricing jacket. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. We got to celebrate that. That's great.
Excellent.
All right, Jason.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right, gentlemen. Later.
Ciao.